Hello, welcome to this podcast interview. We have Matt Redman here today at Redeemer University. My name is Dr. Laura Benjamins. I am an assistant professor of music here at Redeemer and the program lead for the music and worship department. And Matt is here today talking with me about music and worship. He is leading the Worth Conference tomorrow at Redeemer, the Worship and Theology Conference, and we're excited to hear what you have to say and hear you sing and lead worship tomorrow night.
Looking
and
forward
we're really
to it.
grateful for your time here. Thank
Pleasure
you.
to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. I wanted to first begin by asking just about your musical background, how you became a Christian worship leader, singer-songwriter. If you could tell me a bit about how you got into it.
Absolutely. So I had quite a turbulent childhood. I lost my dad when I was 7 years old. My mum remarried. I was actually a really tough time as well. And it's interesting for me because that's when the music first showed up in my life, and in particular worship music, like Christian congregational worship music, because some weeks just felt so turbulent, like everything's shaking and breaking apart. But I would go to church and I would hear this worship music, and it was like everything just stabilized for an hour.
Yeah.
It was, the words I would use now, like it was almost like it was reassuring.
Okay.
It was stabilizing, it was reassuring. This music was like something about the way it was presenting hope and truth and all those kind of things in a way that really permeated me, even as a kid, and even as a teenager. Became a Christian through Louis Palau, the late Louis Palau now, in a soccer stadium, football stadium. I don't know how Canadians say. Do you say soccer or football?
Soccer.
Oh, you do that too. I'm sorry. That's not acceptable. No, but it's great. So in a soccer stadium when I was 10 years old. But like I say, the music started showing up in my life. And why I started playing guitar was I wanted to play those church songs at home.
Okay.
Because I found them so beneficial to me. And I don't know, it just brought me peace, brought me some sanity, kind of kept me afloat through some really tough years. That I didn't want to wait till Sunday to be hearing them again in church. I wanted to play them at home. So I started playing guitar, literally, to play worship songs. And then I started writing worship songs.
Yeah.
And then the leaders at the church found out I was playing at home. And they wanted me to lead in youth group. And I was like, no, I don't want to. I'm just playing at home. I've got no interest in being up the front. That freaked me out, to be honest. But in the end, I pretty much got forced into it, and I loved it. The first time I ever led, I thought, oh, this is what a privilege to be involved in something like this. And just, so I guess people always ask, like, why did you start writing songs? Or why did you start leading songs? And for me, it's because I needed to. I actually needed to, for me. I honestly think they kept me afloat through some of the toughest years of my life. And I guess after a while I figured out, you can actually write songs and lead songs in such a way that really can help other people. Like, I think with the songwriting, you can write specifically enough so that your own story's in there and it's coming out of your heart, it's the overflow of your heart, but not so specifically that other people can't attach their own stories to it. I think some of the best songs have both, right? They came from a very real place, but they're written in a way that people can actually identify and attach their own stories to it. And essentially that's what the Psalms are, right? The Psalms are the outflow of these psalmists. It's every human emotion in there. There's so many different aspects of life and different scenarios and the heights of joy and the depths of despair, and there's anger in there, there's confusion, there's so many things in there. They're all coming from a very real place, but the way they've been written allows us to attach our own hearts and our own stories and our own experiences to them, and crazy powerful. And it's a long answer, but on a little aside there, isn't it incredible? It's not incredible because that would mean we couldn't believe it. It's amazing that we've got these 3,000-year-old songs that permeate our hearts and minds and souls now. They feel relevant to us. They resonate with us. It's amazing. Like you could hear something from 70 years ago and think that has no relevance to my life. Maybe your parents or your grandparents trying to play you something, you're like, yeah, whatever works for you. That's that's not doing it for me. And then you've got these songs written from these guys who nothing in their life looked the same as what our life looks like now. and yet somehow 3,000 years old, written from a different culture, a different period of time, somehow they feel so alive to us, and they resonate with us to the point where a lot of us are reading them every day.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah. So you talk about the real life emotion and depth. That's part of your songwriting, where it's other people can connect to it, but there's a lot of that emotional element or personal element. How do you see the intersection of theology and emotion, or that intersection when you're writing songs? What do you see about it? How do you understand that?
Yeah, it's really good to think about theology and emotion, because it's basically mind and heart, right?
Right.
And we do these Worth conferences, and our strapline is coming back to both the heart and the mind of worship.
Exactly.
And actually, there's a great relationship between truth and emotion, because I don't know if you ever had the experience when you sing something true. Maybe it's like an old hymn and there's one line in there, amazing line, or it might be a more modern song. Graham Kendrick, this English songwriter, he has this, probably my favourite line ever in a worship song. He says, hands that flung stars into space, to cruel nails surrendered. It was a song called The Servant King. Yeah. And there's this explosion that happens in the heart sometimes when you read truth. When you read, especially if it's presented poetically and beautifully and poignantly, and that's what we're trying to do, right? The worst kind of congregational worship is just trying to hype people up and G people up and make something happen. And the best kind is like you present revelation and the response takes care of itself.
Yeah.
So you show something of who Jesus is, and then the response takes care of itself. You don't have to hype them up. You don't even, you don't have to manipulate anyone into doing anything. They're just gonna, if they see Jesus beautifully, powerfully, gloriously, in splendor, in majesty, and mercy, you won't be able to shut them up. They will be singing, and they'll, and I often think that my greatest charge or challenge or call as a worship leader is not to help people to sing, is to help people to see.
Yes.
I think it's quite a shift, and one that I'm trying to encourage a lot of worship leaders in. Like, make that your primary focus, helping people to see, what does Jesus look like? Like, present something of who he is, because if you get the revelation side right, the response will take care of itself. That's such
A helpful way to frame the purpose of worship, and focusing on the revelation of God, his glory, our adoration of him, and the response coming from that. I appreciate that.
Because it's so easy to think about all the other stuff. You're thinking about production and rehearsing the band and linking songs together and what key we're going to do this one in, and it's so easy to think about all that stuff. But actually, in the role that we're in, we should be really thinking about what view of God are we helping people see here? Exactly. Because we've been given this massive responsibility. I personally think we've been given too much. And I shouldn't be saying that because I'm a worship leader. But I actually say to theologians and pastors and preachers, you've given us too much responsibility. I think you're overestimating us. Most of us came into this through the avenue of music, not through the avenue of being trained theologians. And we're playing catch up a bit, and you know what? We need help. If you're giving us maybe 40 minutes in every service to tell people what God looks like, okay, that's great, but then give us some help, give us some challenges, give us some direction, tell us what we're missing, tell us areas you'd like us to grow in. Is there any theological things we never touched that we should? Is there anything we're overemphasizing that you don't want us to? And I think it's a really interesting thing when you start thinking through the role that we've been given carries so much responsibility, and personally I don't want to carry that on my own. That freaks me out.
Right.
I want some help.
Right. I appreciate that you're saying that, and that's what a gap that I've seen in terms of the training the next generation of worship leaders and musicians, and both having the musical skills and capabilities and well-rounded musicianship, but also having that theological training foundation, and pairing that, and how do we mentor worship leaders in church settings. It's essential to think about, and very important.
And you could make the case that there's been some progress in the external stuff, the creative, the production, the craft of songwriting, the quality of a church band these days, I think you can make a strong case for, we've taken some steps forward there.
Yes.
But I think you'd be hard pressed to make a case that we've taken a step forward when it comes to lyric or theology or revelation. And,
Yes.
and so that's what we need to pay extra special attention to, I think, in these days.
Yes, for sure. So when if you're mentoring any newer musicians, newer people, songwriters writing lyrics, what kind of advice do you give them? Is it similar to what you were saying in terms of coming back to the Psalms, thinking about emotion and revelation of God? Is there any sort of process that you take for songwriting?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, that thing of like, don't make the lyric an afterthought.
Yeah.
Because I have met writers who the lyrics like the last minute thing they do. It's like everything else in place. They love the vibe and the flow and the melody and and that's what's been given 90% of the attention. And then it's like, I better finish the lyric. So I think that's the first thing. Like, word is ultimate, so make the lyric ultimate. Music isn't ultimate. Funny, isn't it, that some of these hymns that we have, they've passed down through the centuries, and some of them have different versions melodically, some of them have been reinterpreted stylistically and different things like that, but the thing that survived is the word. That, if there's truth in there, that's the thing that made it through. That's the reason we're still singing them. And that's really interesting to think about, isn't it? Like, if that's because word is ultimate.
That's what lasts.
Yeah. And so that's one thing. I mean, another thing I would say is, like, don't do this Lone Ranger style on your own.
Yeah.
That can be a tradition in some forms of music, but when it comes to writing congregational worship music, I don't think it's the best approach. I think that we're better together. I think that we help each other see our blind spots. We help sharpen each other.
Exactly.
And I've been writing recently with these guys, City of Light. There's modern hymn writers out in Sydney, Australia, and
they are great.
And they pretty much have a rule in their team that no solo written songs. And it's for that reason, like, they've experiences that everything got honed more, got fine-tuned better, became deeper when they worked together and pulled it out of each other and sharpened each other and kept pushing each other to make it better. And so that's the other thing I would say, like, whether it's seeking out co-writers, whether it's seeking out a pastor or theologian to give you some feedback, don't just lock yourself in a room and do it on your own. Like, it's in the kingdom of God, most things are designed to be done with more than one of us.
Exactly, and we're designed to be in community, learning alongside one another, sharpening each other, and working together in that way. Lastly, I just wanted to conclude by asking you about your general philosophy of worship. Your general have you seen worship has shifted a lot throughout the last decade or so. How do you see worship today in response to culture? Just talk a little bit about your approach to worship and philosophy of worship.
I'd be glad to. I think that what's interesting is you can go down and watch a concert or gig, whatever you want to call it, on a Saturday night and in town, and it's great because music's an amazing part of God's blessing and His presence in this world, and you can see Him all over it, right? Whether the person's pointing it back to Him or not. Then you come to Sunday morning at church, and actually everything looks pretty much the same. There's a stage, and there's a musician on the stage, and we're facing them, and they're facing us, and there's amplified music, and they're singing along, and yes, probably some lights. Everything looks so similar, but we have to remind ourselves it's not the same activity. Like, this is actually a pretty different thing here. We are the people of God in the presence of God, pouring out the praises of God, and what we're doing here has a dynamic unlike anything else, and it has some of the similar elements, and one reason is because we're trying to be culturally relevant. So I think the way we've set up with that stage and with those lights and those different things is because we're trying to make people feel at home, make it feel relevant to them, like it fits them. So there's good reasons for it, but we mustn't fall for thinking like, now that's the same thing. So we have to keep reminding ourselves as worship leaders, remind our teams and remind our congregations, this is not that. A concert is amazing. What a beautiful blessing.
Yeah.
But this is actually a different activity. We're talking to God together here. We're on a pursuit of seeing God together here. We're the people of God in the presence of God, pouring out the praise of God. And just to really, go after that and just remind ourselves that, it looks so similar, but this is actually different. And it's interesting because I think sometimes you can look at the Western church, so much of it right now, and you could ask a question like, is this more theatre or is it more throne room?
Yes.
Like, does this activity look more like theatre or more like throne room? And the interesting thing is, if you settle for it just being theatre, you're only ever going to get the power of theatre. And that's great. Theatre can be powerful, but that's not enough for me. Like, the power of throne room is way more powerful, and it's a distinctive of the church, that we need to celebrate and we need to pursue. And so I would leave everyone with this question, like, is the throne setting the tone? Like, for what you do, the way you present yourself, the way you carry yourself, the way you approach this whole thing, the writing of songs, the leading of songs, the way everything's set up in your church service, does it feel like this is a throne room activity? Are we letting the throne set the tone? And that's the key question for me.
Thank you. That's such a great way to approach our thinking about worship and our planning and our engagement with church members. And thank you for reminding us of how to come back to the purpose of worship, which ultimately is to glorify and adore our Lord and Savior.
Absolutely.
And we appreciate your time. So
Fantastic.
Thanks so much, and
Pleasure.
looking forward to the conference.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
See ya.